Do you ever stare too long at something and it begins to feel alive? A shape in the fog, a figure in the dark, something that shouldn't move, but you swear it did. That's how it begins. In 2018, a Canadian artist named Trevor Henderson started posting eerie drawings online, thin, grainy, and strangely believable. He called them found footage of creatures that shouldn't exist. People laughed at first. Then they started seeing them. Each image came with a story, a sound in the distance, a blurred photo someone found in a police archive. It felt too real to be art. And soon, the internet began whispering the same question. What if he didn't create them? What if he just documented them? This is the descent through the 7 levels of Trevor Henderson monsters, from the simple drawings that spark fear to the ones that feed on it. Level 1 whispers in the dark. It begins small. A flicker in your peripheral vision. A whisper that doesn't belong to anyone in the room. Something you hear when you're alone, but only when you're alone. Level 1 isn't about the monsters you see. It's about the ones that learn your rhythm, the silence between your thoughts. You don't recognize them at first, because they don't scream. They hum. This is where the weakest manifestations of Trevor Henderson's creatures live. Echoes, shadows, unfinished ideas floating in static. They're not physical yet. They live inside sound files, blurry photos, unfinished sketches, forgotten corners of YouTube thumbnails. The first time someone ever described the bridge worm, it wasn't a story. It was a sound, a wet dragging noise in an empty tunnel. No body, no proof, just the sound. Weeks later, someone drew it. And somehow, the drawing looked exactly like what the others had heard. Coincidence? Maybe. But that's how all of them begin, as collective hallucinations. Ideas that take form because too many people look at them at once. That's level 1 conceptual existence. You can't touch them here. But they can study you like a painter studying a blank canvas. People often report the same small symptoms after encountering a level 1 entity. Static in old recordings, faces appearing for a single frame, dreams that replay real memories but with one wrong detail, and always the same sound, a faint, distant hum. Maybe it's your fridge, maybe it's your mind, or maybe it's the first sign something's watching, just waiting for you to notice. Because once you notice, they start to take shape. And that's when level 2 begins, the face in the static. It starts small, a flicker in the corner of your eye, a face that doesn't belong to anyone, buried inside the noise. They'll tell you it's nothing, a visual trick, a glitch in your brain. But the truth is simpler and much worse. Something is trying to look at you back. In 1999, a man from Osaka was found staring at a static TV screen for 72 hours straight. Neighbors said they could hear him laughing softly, whispering names that didn't belong to anyone in his family. When police arrived, the TV was still on. The only thing on the screen was a blur of static and a faint outline of a smiling face that vanished as soon as they touched the dial. Doctors called it pareidolia, the brain inventing faces where there are none. But how do you invent a face that moves first? They've been studying this longer than you think. In a 2009 Stanford experiment, volunteers were told to watch pure white noise on a monitor. 35% reported seeing human faces. That's the part they published. What they didn't publish was the transcript of the session where one participant said, "It's not a face, it's pretending to be one." The researcher wrote that sentence down and resigned the next day. You've probably felt it before too. You stare too long into static, fog, or darkness and something stares back. Not from within, but behind the pattern. The pixels rearrange, the shadows breathe, and your heartbeat matches the flicker rate. It's not your imagination aligning with the noise. It's the noise aligning with you. Every culture has their version of this. Ancient sailors called it the gaze of the deep faces rising from the water before a storm. Miners in the 1800s spoke of coal ghosts, pale, hollow faces glowing inside the tunnels before collapses. Today we see them in our screens inside compression artifacts, corrupted webcams, or glitching CCTV feeds. The same entities, new mirrors. You've seen the footage, the live TV broadcast from 1982, where a woman screamed mid-interview, claiming the static opened an eye. The clip was scrubbed from archives within days. Yet, for those who remember, her reflection on the nearby glass wasn't synchronized when she turned away, as if she was delayed by half a second. People think the static is random, but it isn't. Over 1% of analog TV static actually comes from cosmic background radiation, the afterglow of the birth of the universe. Which means, when you stare into the static, you are literally looking into the oldest signal in existence. You're not seeing ghosts. You're seeing something older than ghosts. If you ever feel that pull again, if you catch a shape watching from the flicker of your monitor, or if the noise begins to pulse in time with your breath, turn away. Don't blink, and never let it know you've noticed. Because that's the second level of the real-life glitch, when you stop watching the static and realize the static has been watching you. Level 3, the repeating room. Trevor once wrote something strange on an old Tumblr post, buried between his sketches. A sentence most people skipped over. Some creatures don't stay in space. They stay in moments. They repeat until you notice them. That was years ago, long before anyone realized what he meant. But maybe this is it. Level 3. The repeating room. You see, most people think the monsters appear in forests or streets or tunnels, but sometimes they appear in loops, not locations, moments. It starts small. You take a picture of your living room, and when you check it an hour later, the clock in the background shows the same time. You swear you turned off the lights, but the shadows on the wall haven't moved. And when you play back the footage, you catch something standing perfectly still, as if it's waiting for the reset. In 2016, a Reddit user claimed to see the same man walking past his window every night at 3:14 a.m. Same steps, same outfit, same direction. He set up a camera to prove it. The footage shows the man passing 6 nights in a row, and on the 7th, he stops mid-step, turns his head toward the camera, and smiles. On the wall behind him, a faint outline of a horse's skull flickers in the static. A shape Trevor once called Long Horse's Echo. There's a rumor among digital horror archivists that Trevor wasn't inventing his monsters, he was mapping them. Documenting energy patterns that already existed, creatures that used repetition to anchor themselves in reality. He once said in an interview, "I think the scariest thing isn't when something's there. It's when it keeps being there." Researchers from the University of Toronto's Visual Cognition Lab have tried explaining these experiences as a side effect of pareidolia, the brain finding patterns that aren't real. But when they recreated looped rooms using AR projections, something went wrong. Every test subject reported seeing a faint silhouette appear in the exact same spot during each repetition, even after the image was randomized. Different faces, same position, same posture. Every single time, they nicknamed it the Watcher, because no matter how many loops they ran, the figure never blinked. People who've experienced level 3 say they start to feel watched by the architecture itself. Walls breathe, lights hum. And somewhere in the corner of their eye, something tall, pale, and patient waits for the next loop to load. That's when the glitch stops being random. It becomes personal. One of Trevor's unreleased concepts, known among fans as the Rememberer, was supposedly based on a dream where he entered a hallway that folded endlessly into itself. He said every time he turned a corner, he could see his own back, walking just a second ahead, until he realized the one in front wasn't him anymore. He never finished that drawing. Maybe he didn't need to. Maybe he realized the creature wasn't in his head. It was in the loop itself. So, if your room ever feels like it's replaying itself, if your clock repeats a minute, if your reflection blinks half a second too late, you might have hit level 3. And if you start hearing a faint creaking sound, like the stretching of a spine, the bending of air, don't look up. Because that's when Longhorse arrives, to warn you that the next loop won't end the same way. Level 4, the doppelganger error. There's something strange about seeing yourself where you're not supposed to be. A reflection that moves a second too late, a photo where your face seems slightly off, or a memory where you remember being in 2 places at once. It's easy to shrug off. You blame it on déjà vu, bad lighting, or a trick of the mirror. But if you ever look long enough, if you really stare at it, you'll notice something far worse. The reflection isn't copying you anymore. The 4th level is called the doppelganger error. It's the moment the system confuses who the original is. You're not supposed to meet yourself in reality. That's a rule older than time itself. But sometimes, reality forgets to follow its own rules. And when that happens, you don't see another version of you. You see the correction file. The one meant to overwrite you completely. In 1973, a woman in Bavaria called the police after seeing her husband sitting in their living room, even though he died 3 days earlier in a car crash. Officers arrived to find her in shock, the TV still playing. Neighbors said they saw the same thing through her window. A man, identical to her husband, just sitting there, watching static. The body was gone before police entered. But every clock in that house stopped at 3:17 a.m., the exact minute her husband had crashed. No sign of a break-in. Just the faint smell of burnt plastic. And the woman's words, "He looked right at me, but his eyes didn't recognize who I was." In psychology, this is called autoscopic hallucination, a failure in how your brain merges visual and spatial identity. But scientists never explain why 2 people can see it at once, or why these hallucinations sometimes appear on video and vanish before anyone else can replay them. You see, the glitch at this level isn't visual. It's existential. Reality stops being sure who belongs to the timeline. So it copies you just in case. But the copy isn't perfect. It studies you. It mirrors your choices, your gestures, your voice, until it learns the one thing that makes you different, and deletes it. That's why people who encounter their double often feel lighter afterward, like something essential was taken from them, a memory, an emotion, a dream. Because that's what happens when the system replaces a corrupted file. There's a rumor online, a thread posted by a man named Daniel who claimed he'd seen his double 3 times. Each encounter, he said, happened closer to home. The first was across the street. The second, inside a store's reflection. The third, standing at the foot of his bed. He said it smiled, then whispered, "We're synced now." The post was deleted the next day. But people who saved the screenshots noticed something else. The timestamps under each comment were all posted before the thread went live. That's the 4th level. When you stop being sure if you're watching your life, or if your life is watching you. If you ever see yourself standing where you shouldn't be, don't look too long. Because maybe the glitch isn't showing you a reflection. Maybe it's showing you who's next. Level 5, the silent broadcast. Trevor once said, "Silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the sound that refuses to exist." He wrote that 2 weeks before he disappeared, before the recordings started playing by themselves. By the 5th level, the glitch doesn't need to show itself anymore. It broadcasts instead quietly, through signals, frequencies, and gaps between silence. It starts in small ways. Your phone is buzzing with no notification, a TV flickering on a dead channel, a faint hum inside the walls that stops when you notice it. People think they're going crazy, but they're not. They've just tuned into something that was never meant for human ears. Trevor called this level the silent broadcast. He said the glitch tries to communicate once it realizes you've seen too much. But the human brain isn't built to decode it. So instead of hearing the message, you start translating the static into thoughts. You think they're yours. They're not. The last audio he sent to his colleague was 23 seconds long. No words, just white noise. But when a spectrogram analysis was done, a faint voice was hidden inside the waveform. Slowed down 400%, it whispered, "We're still recording." That phrase became the unofficial definition of level 5. The idea that once you've entered this frequency, the world doesn't stop watching you. In 2018, a research group from MIT studied something called infrasound hallucinations, frequencies below human hearing range. At 18 Hz, some subjects began reporting a sense of dread, followed by the feeling that someone was standing directly behind them. The experiments were discontinued after 2 participants fainted. Their heart monitors both stopped for exactly 7 seconds. One of the researchers later told a journalist off record, "It wasn't fear, it was interference." Trevor believed that the silent broadcast wasn't a sound, it was a correction ping. Reality checking who's still inside the system. He said every time you hear that low hum in your room at 3 a.m., it's not the refrigerator. It's the system running a background scan, counting which of us still remember the glitches. His last notebook entry simply read, "If you hear it once, ignore it. If you hear it twice, it means it heard you too." And maybe that's why the recordings never stopped. Even after Trevor vanished, new audio kept uploading to his cloud drive. Same format, same file names, all titled by date. The most recent one appeared a year later, time-stamped exactly 1 minute before he vanished. You can open it, but don't turn the volume up. Because between the static, some people swear they can hear their own voice, whispering back. Level 6, the observer effect. They say Trevor never vanished. They say he was seen, everywhere. Not alive, not dead, just seen. This is where the glitch turns its eyes on you. Where it realizes you've been looking for too long. Because every level before this was about discovering the system. But level 6? It's about the system discovering you. Trevor once wrote in the margins of his notebook, "Reality behaves differently when it knows it's being watched." That line didn't mean much, until people started noticing it happen. It starts subtle. Mirrors reflecting rooms that don't exist. People finishing your sentences perfectly, your reflection blinking half a second later, and if you focus too long on something that shouldn't move, it twitches. Just once, like it's holding its breath. In 2020, an anonymous Reddit user posted a thread called "The Trevor Glitch," claiming that after watching his recovered videos, his house lights began to dim whenever he opened them again. He described the feeling like someone behind the screen was adjusting contrast manually. The thread was deleted, the account too, but screenshots show his last post. "I think I caught it watching me." By level 6, your perception becomes the weapon. The act of seeing creates distortion. Like shining a flashlight into a mirror, the reflection shines back. Sleep feels shorter here. Dreams feel aware of you. You'll notice faces in them that never appear twice. And when you wake up, they're gone, but your door is open. Trevor theorized that level 6 was never meant for human minds. He called it the observer loop, a point where observation feeds on itself. Each time you try to understand the glitch, you become part of its signal. Your awareness gets recorded. He wrote, "Every question I ask it learns the shape of my thoughts. Soon, it will answer in my voice." Psychologists call this auto-hallucination feedback. But those who've been here know better. It's not your brain turning against you, it's reality mirroring your focus. That's why the longer you stare into the static, the more familiar the whispers sound. Until one day, you realize you're not hearing voices. You're hearing your own, from somewhere on the other side. And if you ever record yourself speaking while in level 6, don't play it back immediately. Wait a day. Because the ones who did reported hearing something they never remembered saying. Phrases like, "Stop looking. It sees you now. You opened the sixth gate." Trevor was last seen on a security feed the day before he vanished. He was sitting alone in his studio, staring into the lens, not moving, not blinking. The camera shut off after 7 hours. When it powered back on, the chair was empty. But the reflection in the studio glass wasn't. Level 7, the fracture point. At this stage, it's not a glitch anymore. It's not a flicker, or a repeating frame, or a misplaced sound. It's reality itself folding. Trevor called this the fracture point. He said it's the moment when the simulation no longer tries to hide the seams. It just gives up. No effort to patch the errors. No illusion of normalcy. Everything starts showing its cracks openly, shamelessly, like the world has decided you've seen too much. He used to record sounds, remember? Frequencies nobody else could hear. One night, in one of his tapes, there's this deep, guttural tone like thunder underwater. Right after that, his breathing changes. He whispers, "It's not outside anymore." That was the last tape he ever made. There's a theory that once your mind becomes aware of the glitch, it begins to sync with it. Like tuning into the wrong radio frequency, and then being pulled through the signal itself. At first, you notice faces. People on the street repeating. A man on the bus with the same hand scar as the one you saw at the store hours earlier. A woman mouthing the same sentence twice, but her lips move differently. You start recording, but when you check your footage later, the faces are blurred, not censored, erased. Some call it the mirror syndrome. Psychologists describe it as reality echoing itself, a coping mechanism when the brain can't tell the difference between memory and moment. But Trevor said it wasn't psychological. He said, the world copies itself when it runs out of space, like corrupted data duplicating over the same file, until the original is gone. And that's when the first disappearance happened. A small town in Oregon, every resident missing overnight. No struggle, no bodies, just homes still warm, food half-eaten, lights still on. And on every security camera, one frame frozen. At 3:03 a.m., like time had tried to move and failed. Trevor believed level 7 was that, the point where the world stops rendering altogether. You're not in the glitch anymore. You are the glitch. Every thought you have creates ripples in reality. Every breath makes the air bend slightly wrong. You can still move through the world, but it's not the same one you started in. Objects behave differently. Mirrors delay your reflection. Water bends light in impossible angles. And at night, you hear yourself walking in another room. Not echoes, just another version of you, a few seconds late. And maybe the most terrifying part? Trevor left notes, drawings of spirals, time loops, and doorways made of static. But on his last page, there were only 6 words. When you see the static, don't blink, because blinking resets you. Each blink rebuilds the frame, just slightly different. Each time, a new version of you continues, and the old one fades. By the time someone reaches level 7, they don't vanish all at once. They dissolve in fragments, photos no longer showing their faces, voices slipping out of recordings, mirrors refusing to reflect them. And maybe that's what happened to Trevor. Maybe he didn't die. Maybe he just stopped syncing with our version of reality. And if you've made it this far, if you felt deja vu, if you've seen the world pause for just a second too long, maybe you're next in line.